Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to do a review of a Tri-Cree copper weave Obsidian Sentinel chassis from Bendu Armory. Now, that was a mouthful, so let's break that down and let me talk about Bendu Armory, who they are, and what you have to do or how you have to think about things if you order from them. So, Bendu Armory is the first company that has really embraced the idea, as far as I've seen, of the carbon fiber lightsaber. Now, there have been carbon fiber parts to lightsaber or carbon fiber weaves used on the outside of aluminum lightsabers. I've seen this around before, like carbon fiber grips. But what they do is an injection molded lightsaber that's made entirely out of carbon fiber. So what you have here, this is their copper weave Obsidian. Now, the Obsidian is the curved hilt model that they make. The radium is the straight hilt that sort of blossoms out at the end. It's a little bit longer. There's going to be some Shoto versions that they're going to be releasing sometime soon, and there's going to be a staff version. But this is the Obsidian, and in all of the cases, what they're doing here is, again, this is an injection mold. We have carbon fiber weave through here, and we have carbon fiber fibers for the rest of it. If you see this in the light, this actually, while it looks gray in person, this gray part right here has a sheen that's actually pretty similar to if you've ever seen an old beaver pelts top hat. If you have, then that's what this looks like. If you haven't, then just imagine something with really slick, small furs that's been slicked down, and you'll understand a little bit about what carbon fiber looks like when sunlight hits it. It's not this sort of solid gray that it appears on screen. It's a very complex texture, and I don't think the camera can exactly capture that. A little bit. All right, so we've got a weave, we've got carbon fiber, and with Bendu Armory, what you do is you order things by the sleeve. Their lightsabers are determined by the sleeve, because the internals of this thing are part of their swappable chassis system. So I can take the guts out of this thing fairly easily, swap it into a radium if I want to. When their Shotos come out, I can pop this out, swap it into a Shoto. When the staff comes out, I can take two sabers, the chassis from two sabers out, and swap them into either sides of a staff. And I'm using the same guts with different sleeves. And that's a system that I really like quite a bit because it saves you having to buy all kinds of different lightsabers to get different looks. You have one chassis, you swap it out and swap it into something else, and you have a completely different looking saber. So you order things by the sleeve. Their Obsidian, like I said, is the curved model. Now, I really like the Obsidian model. For me, it is probably the best belt hanger that I've ever carried. The reason for that is when you're carrying a saber on your belt, the CoverTech clip, it's going to bump into things because you're a little bit wider than you were before, and you're going to run into door frames and stuff like that. If you're carrying around an aluminum saber, you're going to dent it up. There's also the possibility, depending on the saber that you're carrying around, that it's got sharp edges, and they're going to catch on things or catch on your hand. This is a very smooth saber, and it's carbon fiber, which means it's virtually indestructible. There's a clear coat on top of this that can get dented, but the carbon fiber itself can really take a beating. Last time I reviewed one of these things, I took it and I threw it down a concrete hallway and let it bounce off the sides and dropped it on some flagstone, and the thing takes a licking and keeps on ticking. So it's a really, really durable saber because it's made out of this carbon fiber, and it's also very smooth. The aesthetic of Bendu Armory stuff is very close to Legacy era and a little bit of Old Republic. It's got that more organic look. So if you're looking for the sort of steampunk industrial vibe that you get with the original trilogy or even the prequel trilogy, this isn't going to be it. But if you're looking for things that are like Darth Talon, Darth Krayt era, or things that are Old Republic, this is a very nice saber. And the Obsidian looks very similar to Vader's first saber that he took from a Jedi before he got the one that he uses most iconically. But if you read the comics, he took another one from a Jedi and it looked a lot like this. So you order things by the sleeve. So let's take a look at what's under the hood. That's part of it. I said that this was an Obsidian. That's the design of the sleeve. Copper weave. That's the material in here. Now they offer these with all kinds of different material in here. They started doing things with like peacock feathers and all kinds of crazy stuff in here. Made a comment to the guy who runs this outfit that they're becoming sort of the Ollivanders of lightsabers, because what would you like in there? Oh, a feather? Well, I'll just stick that in your lightsaber for you. But, so Obsidian is the model. Copper weave is the material or the accent color. This is a Tri-Cree Sentinel chassis. So let's cover the other two bits here. I said that this thing was a good belt hanger. There's the cover tech. I've replaced it with a thumb screw. It comes with sort of a low profile screw for the blade set screw, but I like thumb screws. The only problem with this is if you put this in a cover tech clip, the thumb screw is going to get in the way of the rotation. Same thing holds true for this. So if it's unscrewed so that you can take the blade out, it's going to stop it from swiveling appropriately in a cover tech. So you either need to keep the low profile screw in and keep it all the way screwed in, or you have to take the set screw out entirely, or you can get something like this, which Custom Saber Shop sells, which is basically a set screw that is a cover tech. So I could take this, screw that in here, and then just use that as my blade set screw and my cover tech clip. But for the meantime, it comes with the low profile and the cover tech. Both of them, well, actually, an interesting thing about these, they use a different wrench, and I thought that was kind of odd. I don't know if that's just the one that I got, but the cover tech and the set screw used a different hex wrench size. The set screw used the same size that Vader Vault uses, which is a little bit bigger, and the cover tech used the same size that like everybody else uses, which is a little bit smaller. So that was odd. But to get this thing out of here, usually you unscrew both parts here. You got to unscrew both parts, otherwise it doesn't come out. Put your thumb on right below the button and push, and the chassis just slides right out. So this thing itself is just a sleeve, and like I said, it's nearly indestructible. The only wear and tear you're going to get on this really is the this little bit right here where the button is. This part is steel, and that's going to get banged up if you drop it or throw it around or stuff like that. So this part will get banged up. But I guess you can chalk that up to weathering. I said that it was a Sentinel chassis. Now, the last Bendu Armory that I reviewed was called their Legionnaire chassis, which was a little bit longer, and it had a crystal chamber in here, and the crystal color changed with the blade color. Now, that was a really cool feature. You wouldn't ever see it through this unless you slid the chassis up like about that far, and then you could see the crystal. But it was a neat feature to have. When I talked to the owner of this outfit again, Andrew, recently, he said, if I ever had to do another crystal chamber, I'm going to go crazy. They are thinking about bringing the crystal chambers back, but when they upgraded the board to the Crystal Focus X off of the Nano Biscotte, which is what the Legionnaire used, they had to redesign the chassis. It has two buttons, an aux button and a power button now. It didn't have that before. And the basic layout of the chassis itself is different. So they redesigned the chassis, and they're eventually thinking about things like OLED screens and all those other nice bells and whistles, and maybe bringing the crystal chamber back. But for right now, they're going with what they call their Sentinel chassis, which is more low profile, more bare bones, but still pretty dang elegant. So a little bit about this install here. Sentinel chassis means it's shorter and it doesn't have the crystal chamber. Tri-Cree. Now they offer these things in in NeoPixel and Tri-Cree. The Tri-Cree model doesn't sell very often from what I understand, because most people are switching to NeoPixel, but I really like the Tri-Cree because all the electronics are in the base, not the blade. And part of what I think the glory of the Bendu Armory saber is it's so durable. So putting a NeoPixel blade that is susceptible to wear and tear on something that's designed to be just ridiculously durable seems to me like a step in the wrong direction. But the Tri-Cree, I love it. A lot of people have jumped on the NeoPixel bus, so more power to them, I guess. I'll review a NeoPixel version of the same. But I got mine in Tri-Cree, so you can see the 3 LEDs in there. So this is a color-changing saber. All right, the chassis is made out of nylon, as I understand. 3D printed nylon, or actually molded nylon, because there's a seam there, so I'm guessing this has to be molded. It's more durable than what their chassis used to be made out of, which was either like ABS or PLA, I don't recall which. But a lot of the chassis that you get on the market are either ABS, PLA, or rosin. I don't see too many nylon ones, but this is more durable, less susceptible to warping. Their old chassis, there's a screw here on either side of this heavy steel front bit that holds the chassis into place. The last one I had that had the other material got a little bit wobbly over time through heavy use. This one, not so much so. All right, so nylon chassis, steel tip, or steel emitter section, or LED holder section, whatever you want to call this. Really good speaker. Now, I had this thing on the lowest volume setting just a little bit ago, and that's still plenty loud for me. But you crank this thing all the way up, and the volume on this is rather crazy. So I'm not really much one for loud sabers myself, but if you're one for loud sabers, this has a really good volume to it. All right, this runs off of an 18650 battery, which is what a lot of them do. If you're an Ultra Sabers person, then you're not used to this setup, but most everybody else runs off of these big batteries like this. All right, there's the crystal focus board right there. This is one of the newest boards on the market, and it's a really nice board. It includes color change. It includes, if you've got NeoPixel, all kinds of ability to customize styles and blade styles and like rainbow blades and stuff. It includes smooth swing, which is something that I've talked about before, but smooth swing is kind of a game changer. If you're buying a new lightsaber and it doesn't include smooth swing, you might want to look into a different board, because smooth swing is basically when you swing it, instead of it cutting out the hum to make the swing noise, it builds the swing noise into the hum and ramps the pitch up based on the speed of your swing. And it's a really cool feature in terms of a soundboard that I think pretty much all the soundboards should be using right now. All right, it's got USB access here. The SD card is right down here, so I can pop that in and it pops right out over the Bendu Armory logo right there. And so I can pop it into my computer and put new sound fonts on it or change the settings or whatever. The crystal focus board does eventually go into deep sleep mode. When that happens, this power button turns off. Right now, the power button is still glowing, which tells me that it's ready, it's booted, but it is drawing a little bit of power from the battery while it's doing this. All right, let me show you a little bit about the install here. I'll take the battery out. You notice on the back of it, there's no visible wires. It's just a board and a chassis, and that's really nice. If you look through here, you can see some of those wires. Under the battery, you can see the install a little bit better. So it's a pretty neat install. I mean, it's not meticulously braided like I've seen some other installs be, but the wires are not a jumble. They seem to be going in a relatively organized fashion, and it looks kind of cool under there and all circuitry-like. So pretty dang clean install. So there we go. So let me put this back together. I'll use the set screw and cover tech wheel that I talked about earlier. All right, so a really nice saber. If you order this, what it comes with is, generally speaking, a heavy grade ultra edge blade with a shine through tip. Now, most saber companies diffuse these with diffusion film. Bendu Armory does not. Bendu Armory and Kyberlite are the only two that I've seen that don't. The saber still lights up. The diffusion isn't as even as it could be. The weight's a little bit less, but by default, they do heavy grade. Now, a lot of companies will upcharge you to get heavy grade. Bendu Armory charges you for the heavy grade, but if you elect to have mid-grade, it's all the same price. There isn't a deduction, but you can have mid-grade if you like. I prefer mid-grade because heavy grade swings kind of like a baseball bat, but if you're looking for the ultimate in durability to go along with a super durable carbon fiber hilt, then heavy grade is fine. The other thing about not diffusing is undiffused blades kind of have a hollow tingy noise when they hit, whereas a diffused blade has a more solid, sort of grounded thud to it. I prefer the more solid thud, but durable blade, nice blade stock. So this is what comes with the Tri-Cree model. Now, a word of warning about the Tri-Cree model. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more when I discuss the Crystal Focus board, but the Crystal Focus board was geared very strongly towards NeoPixels, which means their default files for Tri-Cree are bare bones and super wonky. The power save feature is not turned on. The Tri-Cree never puts itself into deep sleep as of the time of this video if you're going with the default files. The blade profiles, there aren't any style profiles. So it's very bare bones, and it seems like they just shortchanged the Tri-Cree setup in favor of the NeoPixel setup. But I'll talk about that more when I talk about the Crystal Focus board. Suffice to say, though, if you do get one of these things from Bendu Armory, they're using default files. So you're going to want to go in and edit those files and clean up the configuration file for the Tri-Cree if you get a Tri-Cree, because Plector Labs was not very diligent in their Tri-Cree setup. All right, so pop that back in here. The other thing about this, when I reviewed the last one that had the Legionnaire chassis, I talked about this being top heavy. That's because this area up here is steel and it's super heavy and super dense. And this area down here, the nylon chassis and the battery do weigh something, and so does the speaker, but not nearly as much as this top part. So the weight on this is really, really heavily up here. This part right here is essentially hollow, actually. If you look at the chassis next to the sleeve, now that I've got it not all put back together, look at the chassis next to the sleeve and you'll see there's a lot of hollow space back here. Now that said, you could counterweight this yourself. You can put anything you want in there, but you could homebrew that. As I understand it, Bendu Armory is looking at a counterweight process that they can use for this, but as it stands, it's very top heavy, which for dueling is fine. But if you're going to be doing flips and you're going to be letting go of the saber, it's going to toss more like a hammer than a lightsaber in some ways, unless you're gripping it really high up here. The good news is that with that weight, this bottom part right here flares out, so the saber is not going to come out of your hand as easily as some others that might be tapered, because it stops right here. So a little bit of safeguard for that. Very nice design. The top heaviness is a little bit off-putting, and you're going to need to get used to that. All right, so features that come with this, again, more on that when we get to the board, but color changing. There we go. We've got blade lockup, we've got flicker, we've got blaster deflect. There's a blaster. We've got spectrum color changing.
Spectrum.
We've got as many sound fonts as we want to throw on this, I believe. And quite a lot of features packed into a tiny little board. So here you have it. Let me go through all of those parts again. Obsidian, copper weave, Sentinel chassis, Tri-Cree from Bendu Armory. All right, if this has been of use to you, join me back and we'll take a look at this thing's NeoPixel brother in the next video.